I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Call to Coach with special guest Kathy Kersten, recorded on November 15th, 2013. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions or comments, even contributions during the show, we do have a live chat room available right below the video window. And if you're listening to the recorded version, you can email those questions after the show at coaching@gallup.com. And, of course, don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's really easy, just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch the video and both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening to past shows over at coach.gallup.com. Jeremy Petrosini is our host today. Jeremy works as a learning and development consultant here at Gallup on the riverfront with me, and it's great to see you again, Jeremy, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, it's exciting to be here as always. And we quickly, if you've been watching the GallupStrengthsCenter.com website, it's fun to watch the tens of thousands of people that take StrengthsFinder, and we're closely approaching that 10 million mark. So about just over 9.5 million people. Again, it was Don Clifton's original dream to say, what if we hit 1 million, right? And now we're at that 10 million mark. So to all you out there, again, this call is designed for coaches where you get to hear from other coaches. And part of our mission, again, if we're gonna reach over 1 billion people with strengths, not just 10 million, but 1 billion, we need at least 1 million external coaches like yourselves who are listening to just be empowered and be equipped to do this. And so we're excited. As Jim mentioned, Kathy is with us today, and she is a strength coach, was originally certified with Gallup around the StrengthsFinder instrument back in 2006, where she worked full-time with Rackspace Hosting. And she worked in HR with manager and employee onboarding and engagement, and really did some phenomenal things to not just integrate strengths and introduce it as kind of this assessment for people, but something that really became transformational to their culture and ultimately even the community where a lot of their rackers, right, is what we call employees from Rackspace, but where a lot of the rackers live. So, Kathy, thank you so much for being here. I know now, and part of your story is you had decided to be mom and play that role full time, but you still wear that coaching hat and are doing a lot in the nonprofit world and kind of gearing that back up. But it's so exciting to have you here today. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Jeremy and Jim, for inviting me to be here, and thanks to Paul Allen, who I got this opportunity from. I've been watching the Call to Coach podcast as soon as I found them, and it was shortly after Kurt Leavesveld had done his interview. And man, every single interview that you guys do adds to my coaching toolkit, whether it's through sound bites from Kurt, because he speaks in sound bites. Man, I write as fast as possible whenever that guy's talking. Or even last time when I completely geeked out with Dr. Lopez and how much data he gave us and things to use and different resources. So it's great. So I'm excited to be here and be a part of that today.
Good. Well, Kathy, tell us about your journey. How did you kind of discover that sense of really you personally feeling this call to be a coach?
Sure. Well, I took the StrengthsFinder back in 2006, like you talked about, Jeremy. I had just joined Rackspace. I was a member of their customer service team. I was a frontline customer service account manager. And when I got my top 5, to be honest, I was, I thought these things described me, but I didn't really think they were anything special necessarily.
What are your top 5?
My top 5 are strategic, input, learner, belief, and maximizer.
Okay, great.
And they resonated, it totally resonated with me that, yeah, these things describe me, but I didn't realize really how I could use them to differentiate myself. And so when I went to one of the trainings they have at Rackspace for teams to learn about their strengths, I sat in a room with my teammates and I saw the diversity in the top 5 across the board with everyone else, and I realized, oh, I see the world in a very unique way, very different from my neighbor who I sit next to all day long sees the world. And this kind of helps us understand why not only we work together and partner well, but we also sometimes have conflict and, interesting conversations around the way we see things. So it was an eye-opener. And when I went to Gallup I joined the Rackspace University team as a trainer, and I went to Gallup to get my certification in strengths. And whenever I sat through the 3 to 4 days of intense talking about strengths, I was on fire, and I came home a completely different person, not just because I had experienced single-digit temperatures for the first time in my life in Omaha, Nebraska.
You're welcome.
I am from Texas.
We were almost there last week, by the way, and it's still November. So.
Are you kidding? Well, it's going to be about 80 today in San Antonio, so I feel sorry for you. But it was an memorable experience because I got to learn so much about the Strengths program and how people are using it. Now, how did I come to coaching and how do I love it? And why do I love it so much? Is because it's made such a meaningful difference in my life, and I've seen it in hundreds and hundreds of Rackers' lives make a meaningful difference in how they manage their relationships, how they manage their own individual engagement at work and at home. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Cool. Well, and I want to make sure before we wrap up today, people hear two aspects of your story. So one, kind of you as a coach and that individual impact, but then I know there's a lot of people too who work inside large organizations.
Sure.
Probably similar in size to Rackspace. You said it was about 6,000 employees, is that right?
It's a little over 5,000 at this point.
Okay. So, I mean, there's people listening, might be smaller organizations, larger organizations, who many of them have that passion to say, how do we create a strength-based culture? So start there and talk a little bit about how did it go from just, a book or an assessment that everybody took, and what were some of the things that you did to really embed strengths into the DNA of Rackers?
Sure, absolutely. Well, one thing that I want to talk about first, and it's something that I completely took for granted at Rackspace, is the importance of leadership buy-in. Graham Weston is the chairperson or chairman of the board of Rackspace, Lanham Napier being the CEO. They both believe so strongly in their strengths, and they regularly are promoting the strengths program and talking about their own strengths. Like they would reference their own individual strengths when they're talking in one-on-one conversations or across the entire organization. And that helps because that builds a strength-based culture, and it helps people like me who are really into strengths flourish because, wow, we can see them doing it, so therefore we know that we can do it too. So that's one thing for sure that I kind of took for granted because it was so easy. There was never, I never had to get executive buy-in. Executive buy-in was already there. When you think about strengths-based cultures, though, I follow that Gallup path. Now, if you're not familiar with the Gallup path, and Jeremy, what book is the Gallup path in? I know it's in Follow This Path, right?
Yeah, there's a book, Follow This Path. Yep, that it's there. And Now Discover Your Strengths, we lay it out a little bit. And they can find it on Gallup.com, too. So.
Okay, perfect. So, take a look at that. And what I focused in whenever I moved to the Rackspace engagement team and Rackspace University, I looked at that path and I thought about how can we embed it in everything that we do. Not only talking about helping individuals find or identify their strengths and finding the right fit within Rackspace, but then arming great managers or managers with the ability to use strength-based management with their people. And then, letting them go and take it as far as they can. Now, my team contributed a ton, and they still are, and the people, the HR team at Rackspace is doing amazing things with strengths, in which I can give you lots of examples, Jeremy. But my team specifically really wanted to make sure that we had it embedded in every piece of the employee life cycle. So we hit them at onboarding and gave them a little taste, and they usually got to hear from either the founders of the organization or Graham Weston himself, the chairman of the board, talk about how they use their strengths. And they're looking at their top 5, or they get their strengths assessment with their offer letter, which is really cool.
Wow, really cool.
Yeah, it's like a gift, Here's a gift. Welcome to our organization. You're one of us. Help us, we want you to start learning some of the languages that we use, and the Strengths Finder is completely one of those. But then working your way around the employee life cycle and thinking, how can you add it into performance and aiming your strengths at your goals, and how do you work on development? Obviously, it's a developmental tool, so there's plenty there, and Gallup gives you tools for that. But as well as think about employee relations and helping people who are going through crucial conversations with their manager, looking at their manager's strengths and describing how do they see the world and how do you see the world, and using that language to help overcome some of that employee relations stuff. It's amazing. It's goldmine.
What were some of the things you guys did, Kathy, to make people kind of not just learn about their top fives? We kind of call that naming it piece, but obviously the claiming it of here's who I am. I know at Gallup, and you've been to our riverfront, obviously maybe we're too distracted by the cold to pay attention to much, but we're putting everybody's top five signature themes on their nameplates, on their doors, or on a desk plate in our email. What were things that you guys maybe took from that, but also kind of maybe integrated in your own culture as well to just help, again, kind of that stickiness of learning each other's themes?
Absolutely. Well, we use the nameplates. We put them on cubicles. We have them, we ask them to put it around you to help yourself remember them at all times. But actually, one of the coolest things that we did at Rackspace, and that they still do today, is, and it came from the employee base. It came from some really engaged Rackers just wanting to make a really great impact on the culture. They actually asked for it to be put on their security name badges. So Rackspace is a highly secure company. They have, within the walls, you have to go in through security, and security is very tight. So every Racker must wear a name badge, much like hospitals do, and it scans you in and out. So the picture or the badge typically just had your picture and your last name on it, and these really engaged group of Rackers thought, what would it be like if we could put your strengths on that badge as well? So you are literally wearing your strengths around your neck every day long, and cool. And then that adds to conversation. So if an executive walks up to you, they can look at your badge, know your name, and see your face, and then flip it over and look at your top 10 or your top 5 strengths rather, and have that instant conversation and connection with each other.
That's so cool. I know we just launched an app, for iPhone and Android where people can actually look at if they've taken their strengths through the Strength Center. They can see their top 5 or full 34. But that readiness, kind of always in my pocket, we're out at lunch, and it sounds like that badge did that for you guys, right? Where you're sitting at lunch with somebody and going, what are your themes? Or you're sitting in a meeting room and maybe somebody new to the team. And I love the onboarding piece too, because right away, from the time somebody joins the organization, they're understanding what they do best, not just their job title, but also, how to work with a manager or somebody else that has different themes in theirs. So talk to, and I love the way you're breaking this down for us too, because again, whether some of the coaches listening are within an organization, or even if they're independent coaches, they're going to hear from the organizations they work with, how do we embed this? How do we make it stick? Maybe we're lighting brush fires in pockets, but our CEO is not yet bought in. So that idea that you talked about of leaders getting buy-in, integrating it into all aspects, onboarding, badges, day-to-day conversations. How did you guys take it even further into kind of thinking about where people are at their best? So how did managers think about strengths in a way of, are we positioning people appropriately in that right fit? You talked about the path, and that right fit piece is we've hired them, we've selected them, but now how do we give people the opportunity to play to their strengths or do what they do best? Talk a little bit about that, and maybe how you internally advise some managers with some of their team members.
Certainly. I think it's about allowing employees to do some discovery on their own and giving them the chance to take risks. And I'm thinking specifically about how at Rackspace they take right fit very seriously, so seriously that if a Racker is interested in, perhaps, it's a technical company, right? So it's a cloud computing company, and they have lots of technical Rackers, and many times technical Rackers think that their career path leads them into management. They're extremely technical and skilled at what they're doing, and they're doing very well, and then they want to move into a management role where they're managing people who do that same skill. And sometimes it works beautifully, and sometimes it doesn't work so beautifully. Yeah. And then they find that even though the career path seems to give you the ladder of going into that management position, you find yourself into a spot where it's calling on different strengths and skills that maybe you have or that strengthen you. And at Rackspace, one of the things that I think that makes it one of those best places to work type of places is that they are willing to give you that chance and try it out, but you also have the ability to come back and say, you know what? I don't really like this, or it didn't fit my strength, or it's not pulling on my strength, it's not energizing me in that way. Or, your employees are also saying, I'm not sure this was the right move for this person. And you can move back to that position where you were the technical lead, or you can move back into that technical spot without losing face, without having to leave the organization, which is in most cases, people have to leave the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're, enterprising individuals and we're navigating our career paths, it's amazing to do it in an environment where you can go and take a risk and try something new. And then if you find that it doesn't fit your strengths or you can't leverage them in that area, you can move back to a place that can without ruining your career there. And that's when it's hard to overcome that and to realize, or the conventional wisdom of not doing that, into doing that.
Yeah, and that piece you said, again, so many organizations fall into that mode of that Peter principle of, you've done this so long, now you're manager. In recent data from our stats, we know that really only about 1 in 10 individuals have the natural talent to be a good manager and really enjoy it. So that conversation around, are you playing to your strengths? I love that you guys have given people the freedom to feel like there's probably other routes for you to be successful long-term here versus just management.
Right.
Talk a little bit too, because one of the things when you and I were able to connect prior to this, one of the things that both Paul was really excited about, as was I, is it didn't stop there, right? It didn't stop in the walls of Rackspace, but strengths became something that was integral again to your leadership. All employees were buying in and seeing the benefit of it. People are finding the right fit from a career path standpoint. But then you talked about, and this is even a part that you still get to play a little bit, as mom, but also kind of working, through some nonprofit lens in the community. How did you guys take it from just impacting individual employees to their families and then the community?
Sure. Well, I know that the coaches that are on the call today probably have experienced the same exact thing. When you get to the end of a coaching session or a coaching class, or if you're doing a team workshop, and the people around the table are sitting there and they're saying, man, I wish I could know what my wife's strengths are, or I wish I knew what my husband's strengths are, my kids' strengths. And so hearing that enough times encouraged us at Rackspace to build a strengths for couples class. And so what we did was we took the same format. We purchased a book for the spouse of the Racker, and we sent it home, and we invited them to come back. Gave them 2 weeks to take the assessment, send them the top 5, we'll make them a cute top 5 card, and they'll come and have dinner at Rackspace, and we will talk through what these strengths mean, and help them realize, this is you're married to a person at Rackspace who's using this language. Now you can take that language home and use it in your relationships at home as well. And it's it's so popular. That class, they would only accommodate 15 people at a time, or 15 couples at a time. It sells out. Like, people sign up. There's a waiting list within the first 5 minutes they announce those classes. It is incredibly popular. We also have lots of Rackspace has a lot of people who are board members on nonprofits.
Sure.
And what we would find is that the board member who is the Racker would find such usefulness in knowing how their team interacts and leverages the strengths program. They would want to take that into the nonprofit organization that they're on the board of, and have that be a structure that they could discuss things and learn about each other as a team building aspect of that board of directors. So we would go out, they'd regularly come to us in HR and ask for us to come to a nonprofit board meeting with them and hand out books and encourage them to take the assessment and talk about what this means to our culture at Rackspace. So it just sort of blends its way out through other people's personal lives in ways that were awesome.
Yeah, and again, those stories, and I know you could go on and on, but where you see it then impact people's families, they take it into their small businesses or organizations, schools. It's so cool, again, to hear that this wasn't just a HR initiative that was the book of the year, Who Moved My Cheese. Now we moved on to Strength Finder, but just the way that, again, embedding it into your culture, and as you know and experience, like the way that drives employee engagement, customers experience it, it drives productivity, and again, a lot of the success. We were kind of joking earlier that you guys are doubling number of employees, and again, you quickly had to say, I'm either going to work 24 hours a day or see my kids. And you chose the latter, but it's fun that you're still so close to it, and we're key to it. So, hey, Jim, do we have Any key questions out there that you want to interject?
Yeah, I do. Actually, let's get one out of the way, Jeremy. Let's get one out of the way. You mentioned our iPhone and Android app. Those are actually not quite ready yet. So some folks have said, hey, how do I get these apps? We're waiting on an approval from Apple right now for the iPhone one, and then the Android will be a couple days behind it. So Jeremy was kind of just hoping that.
I think I was able to sneak in, Jim, when I downloaded it, and it's on my phone, but then I know they retracted it for. Right?
They did.
Coming soon.
Coming soon. So for the app question, that is yet to come. Jess from Fargo, North Dakota asks, could Kathy talk a little bit more about how they've used strengths to enhance teamwork? And that's a question that's kind of come up a couple times, to work together more effectively. So maybe a little more teamwork in that, Kathy?
You bet. Working with teams is actually my favorite thing to do. I spend most of my time and most of my experience is in a team-based type of workshop. And the reason I like it so much, and I feel like it has been successful for me, and it's my sweet spot whenever it comes to coaching, is because not only are you coaching and pulling discoveries out of people as they're talking, you have the benefit of the people who work around them affirming those things in those people. So the type of environment that I try to create whenever I'm doing a team workshop is, of course, a safe one, and I, as the facilitator, try to play a role in which I dig deeper. And a great, rich conversation around a team's top 5. Not only as the individuals, every single person has those top 5 strengths, but what does the top 5 look like as a team? And, pulling on an Excel spreadsheet and putting them together and saying, what's this team's top 5? And how does that flavor the way this team behaves, celebrates, learns together, communicates, all of those things, and having an open discussion about that is some of my favorite things to do around teams. A lot of us are motivated by our strengths, and when we hear how other people that we're working very closely are motivated, we can then begin to leverage each other through that. So literally, if it's sitting out and brainstorming, after you talk about strengths, one great team-based activity to do is, what is the work on our plate as our team, and how can we divvy this up based on strengths? If there's a client call that needs to be made, let's go pull on people who have woo. Let's pull on people who enjoy going out there and breaking that connection. And then they're quite ready to dust off their hands and say, okay, I'm going to pass this over to a different part of or a different person to take care of building out and developing that relationship. In figuring out how you can divide that work up is really where it comes in great and handy.
Very good. David in Eugene, Oregon asks, does Kathy have any data on impact of strengths-based culture at Rackspace?
Impact. No. So David, do you, I don't know if I can ask him back a question.
Yeah, he's listening. He's listening,
okay.
And then he'll put it in chat, and I can come back around to you on that question as well.
Okay. So there are multiple ways to measure the strengths piece, and I'm sure that Jim and Jeremy can speak to the direct correlation through the Q12 and that question of do what I do best and strengths. So that is absolutely, that's hard data that is owned by Gallup, and I'd let the experts talk about that. But there's other impact-oriented things that you see, like loyalty to a company. If you feel like someone is, or if you feel like you are engaged and you have the ability to continually develop and play to your strengths within your role, you're more likely to be loyal, and that's in the books, that's in the Gallup stuff. But Rackspace is regularly recognized here in the San Antonio area as well as Texas as a best place to work. They are on the Fortune Top Workplaces list and have been for many years now. Our UK office, which in London, Rackspace UK, I keep saying "our" because I'm a wrecker at heart, even though I'm at home with my babies. They are a best place to work in London, and so I think there is, people are promoters of the culture at Rackspace. Many of the recruiting aspects are found by Rackers. I'm sorry, not many of them. The number one way people are recruited at Rackspace is through referrals, because people want their friends and family to come work in an amazing environment.
Very good. By the way, Jess says thank you for the question. So it does circle back around from chat to you. So
awesome.
Chatters, nice job. Jody in Williamsburg, Virginia, asked this question: do some people feel boxed in by having their strengths so visible to everyone all the time? I know some people who feel like their strengths, while valuable, do not necessarily define them.
Oh yeah, yes. I actually, one of the organizations I'm working with right now, I had an employee. I'm working with a nonprofit. It's a charter school here in San Antonio, and I've had more than one employee, not many, I mean, literally maybe two, who were very concerned that their strengths were going to put a negative label on them. And not so much because of what their strengths were. They had, the one in particular had a strong strategic thinking theme. Like all 5 of her top 5 were in that strategic thinking quadrant from strength-based leadership. And so she was very concerned that she was looking like she was just a one-dimensional employee. And it's helping her realize that she has more than 5 strengths. Number one, we've got 34 of them in the program, but your top 5 aren't just the only ones that you own and possess. You're more than that. But as well as, how do you use those strengths? It doesn't, in Dr. Lopez's interview, you guys said it best, where it doesn't say what work you're going to do. It's just going to tell you how you're going to get it done.
Right.
And coaching her to help use that language of, this is how I think, that helps me be extremely productive, and understanding how giving herself time to think and space to think and being very intentional in those areas help her productivity when she's having to be in the execution bucket and get things done, or when she's building relationships, how she uses those strengths as well.
All right, one more question, Jeremy, here. Samara in San Francisco asks, how do you help people of different tenure use their strengths for development?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I have a super deep answer for that, in that everyone's on a different journey. So I think one of the major challenges at Rackspace was tenure in their strengths journey rather than tenure in their age or tenure in their business experience. And what I mean by that is, if you have taken the StrengthsFinder 7 years ago, how do we make that fresh for you on a day-to-day basis? If you're not a kind of a strengths junkie like myself, I'd totally label myself a strengths junkie. Like, it just keeps getting better and better and better. If you're not that, how do we make it fresh for you so that you'll still use the language and it won't feel like this is just something we used to do and now I'm past that? And that was a challenge. So we had to think of creative and fun ways to use strengths. This is as an example that I'm currently working with the organization I'm working with now, but thinking through fun ideas to bring people together based on strengths, like having a lunch and learn for ideation people, where they throw out some ideas and then they just brainstorm for them, for about an hour over their lunch break, and just, that's an energizing activity for them. And pulling people together in that way to say, okay, we're not going to make you sit down and talk about your strengths perhaps, or be coached on it, but how can we utilize them to benefit the company?
All right, Jeremy. Yeah, I think so. Nice work, Jeremy. Anything you want to, as we're coming up on the 30-minute mark, and we can go a little bit over, but Jeremy, what else do you have for us?
No, I think that was great. So I appreciate your insight on all that, Kathy. The one thing, and you kind of teed it back to us too, when the individual, and I forget who it was, Jim, that was just asking about have they seen direct impact, on the business at Rackspace? And to Kathy's comment, and even what we've seen through Gallup research, again, looking at our clients who leverage strengths versus those who don't. One, obviously, we've done a ton of research on employee engagement. We know that people that focus on their strengths are 6 times more likely to be engaged in their job. And so that kind of, do they enjoy their job? Is there higher productivity? All those things are in place. Specific just to strengths, we've actually seen that teams and individuals that focus on their strengths have 14.9% lower turnover, 12.5% greater productivity, and 8.9% greater profitability. So there really is more than just a feel good, people are happy with, they're 3 times as likely to have a better quality of life. But sometimes people are like, that's nice, and we're a great place to work, and we've made people's lives better, but bottom line, a lot of times this is where leaders in your company, right, like a CFO going, this is costing us money. If we're bringing spouses in here, but to see that it really does decrease turnover, increase productivity, increase profitability, I think this is the hard science that, again, validates that a strength-based approach versus a weakness-fixing approach, or just kind of ignoring your people, giving them autonomy, letting them do their own thing, focusing on people's strengths really does, again, this is where even that strength-based culture piece that you talked about, it really does change so much of how people live every day, so that it becomes, from a brand standpoint, how people are known, how the organization is known. So, Jeremy, but yeah, thank you, Kathy. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, Jeremy, one more question for both of you, and then we'll kind of wrap with this question. So
Great.
The first part's for you, Jeremy. The second part's for you, Kathy. So, and we get this a lot, so I thought it might be good. We're in our 10th or 11th show here. It might be good to address this. So Pete in New Hampshire asks, what exactly is a strengths coach? And when we talk, Jeremy, maybe you can explain that. But exactly how does one become a strengths coach? Is there a certification? Are there paid positions available at a strengths? Paid positions available at a strengths as a strengths coach? Is it just something that you do? You integrate into your regular job? Some of your land assumes prior knowledge and understanding that leaves out strengths newbies like myself. So, Jeremy, cover the first part of that. How do we do that?
Yeah, great question. And even in reference here to part of when Kathy was trained as a coach, it used to be something that up until about 12 months ago, that Gallup only trained people inside of a client organization. So large organizations like Rackspace, we train people like Kathy to do that there. Unfortunately, then if she left, her accreditation stayed with the organization. A year ago, we made a decision, and I mentioned at the start of the call, that we want to see over 1 million strength coaches out there. So is there training available? Yes. If you go to the website that we mentioned, GallupStrengthsCenter.com, you'll see on that upcoming training events. We started those last January in Omaha, and we now have them at city centers around the world, including one coming up in Singapore. We've done Singapore, London, Sydney. We've got here in the U.S., D.C., and Omaha. We're going to be hosting some courses this next year in Irvine. So we're wanting to kind of really make them more readily available for people. They've continually sold out, so it's telling us there is interest from coaches out there. There's also online on that same GallupStrengthsCenter.com site, there's a coaching toolkit, so which can be a great introductory for people for $500 to grab that kit. There's several kits out there. Somebody asked the question on teams. There's one specific for teams. And for some of you who are managers and just want to take a strength-based approach to managing, there's a new high-performance management toolkit out there as well. And so we're really excited, again, to equip you all as external coaches. There is now money to be made. Many of you listening have started your own businesses that maybe already existed or have started them in this past year, to now really begin to market yourselves as a coach. And once you've gone through that training and gained the accreditation from Gallup, can market yourself as a Gallup certified coach. So again, GallupStrengthsCenter.com, you can get all that information, and coaching@gallup.com is a place you can email us for questions, and we can make sure we answer those questions you have.
And then, Kathy, your advice for the strengths noob that's out there, the somebody coming to it, and maybe this is brand new to them. You, as an external coach, what's your advice?
Oh, man. I was really hoping this question could come up because I was thinking about it a lot. And, I talk about strengths everywhere I go, paid or not. So at church, I do it with the board of directors of the different ministries at my church. I'm going to be doing one with the high schoolers and their parents in January, and I'm really excited about that. Doing it with nonprofits, doing it, talking about it everywhere you go, and getting the more opportunity you have to hear people tell you about how they use their strengths, it gives you imagery that you can rely on and call on as a coach to think, this is how an intellection person thinks, this is how a strategic person thinks, and understanding that and listening and listening and listening and just adding to your toolkit as a coach. That's my number one newbie advice is talk to as many people as possible as you can, and it's going to help you build your toolkit.
All right, very good. Well, with that, we'll wrap it. Stay around if you're listening live. We do a post show, and there's some questions that came in I couldn't get to just because time didn't allow. We'll ask Kathy those questions in the post show. If you did put something in chat and you didn't get it in there, and I missed it somehow, put it in chat again, and we'll ask Kathy here. We'll stay around for about 15 minutes or so and get some of those questions answered. But we want to remind everyone to take full advantage of the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. Again, that's just gallupstrengthscenter.com. And send us your questions and comments. You can send that to coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video. So if you missed part of this, it'll actually be available in replay right away after everything's done here. But you can catch all of that out at coaching.gallup.com. We have a Facebook group that you can get notified of future shows in case somebody mentioned in chat they didn't know this was their first time out here today. You can get notified of future shows. Just go to Facebook and search Called to Coach. That'll get you there. We're also looking for guest bloggers over at our coaching blog. If you're interested in submitting a post for consideration, you can contact us through coaching@gallup.com and put guest blogger in the subject line, and we'll get right back to you. Be sure to subscribe to Call to Coach on the YouTube channel so you never miss a video that we do. youtube.com/user/Gallup Strengths, or you can just search Gallup Strengths Center. That will get you there as well. We want to thank Kathy for joining us today. We look forward to the next Call to Coach. Jeremy, what can you tell us about what's coming up next?
Yeah, our next call will be December 6th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And the coach we're going to have with us, kind of a cool story, Jane Jenkins, and she's somebody, Kathy, who has maybe even fast forward your life a year where you want to be next. But Jane has spent over 23 years working with several different Fortune 500 companies, was very successful sales, marketing, operations, organizational development, came across strengths and just absolutely loved it. Did a lot even alongside kind of Marcus Buckingham Company because there was a lot there that you could be certified with, and now is just thrilled with the fact that Gallup's training external coaches. She went through our training in Washington, D.C. Just last month, but she has launched her own successful coaching consulting organization called Churchill Leadership Group, and just has some great input and advice to many of you out there who are maybe starting out with your own coaching practice of what worked for her, why she loves it, how she's been able to work with not just senior executives but their entire organization. So we're excited for that December 6th, again 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, we also very excited to mention we're going to interview Robert Scoble on January 14th as well. Robert is a tech evangelist for Rackspace, and if you're a tech guy at all, he's a legend out there. And so we get an opportunity. He's big on strengths. And so we're going to get an opportunity to interview Robert and talk about how he uses his themes and turns those into strengths in his job. And so we're excited for that coming up January 14th. Watch all of that over on our Facebook page. Just search Called to Coach over on Facebook. Stay around for the post show. Your questions and comments live in chat. We want to say goodbye, everybody. Got a few more questions for you, Kathy. Can I have you hang
Certainly.
tight and ask you a few more questions? Awesome.
Of course.
Let me do that here. Let me get that pulled back up. Let's see. 1 second here. I lost my form that had all the. There we go. So and I cannot pronounce this name, but someone from Bangkok asked, can you explain or can you expand on using strengths for right fit? How do you ensure clients don't interpret that as using strengths for selection?
Okay. Okay, so you know what? Jeremy, I want to give you the opportunity to kind of do the Gallup side of that.
Yep.
Because you do have the selection tool and you can plug that.
Yeah, let me talk to that, Kathy, and then you can kind of unpack how you guys took an approach to, because you mentioned like letting people see their strengths before they join the organization, but how it was kind of the second piece, not the first, to who do we hire, right? So the piece, and we talked about this, Jim mentioned where you can go and listen to past calls. If you go on and listen to the call we did last time with Shane Lopez, Kathy referenced this earlier, but strengths really tells you how you do the job, not can you do the job. So if you're hiring people to do sales, it's not they need to have 3 of these top themes in their top 5. That's not the approach. You can have salespeople that have a multitude of any of the 34 themes and a combination of. The question is, can they sell? Are they good with people? Are they highly motivated? And so Gallup does have, as Kathy referenced, a whole kind of suite of selection instruments One of our new manager instruments that we just built is now available, where if people are saying, if only 1 in 10 people have talent to be a manager, how do I know? You can actually have them go through a separate instrument that kind of looks and feels like StrengthsFinder a little bit, but it's designed based on studying the best in that role. So StrengthsFinder is a broader group kind of studying talents of all individuals. There are instruments we've built that get specific to a role. So again, strengths is kind of not seen as can they do it, but how they do it. And just like Kathy said at Rackspace, once we've identified, yes, that this person can do the job, Gallup has them take StrengthsFinder right away. We give them an hour coaching call before our employees are onboarded as well. So it's part of their DNA of here's now how you operate, and it gives their manager insight as well to how they get things done, how they're motivated, what those things are based on their top 5.
And I can think of a story that I'd be happy to share, an example of an employee where I saw extreme success from the Strengths program. A person this gentleman was a help desk employee, a technical help desk employee. So he was a generalist for the most part. He knew lots about computers, and after taking the Strengths assessment and as well as going to a Strengths class or working with a Strengths coach, he saw his own personal strengths in a new light in which he had thought negatively about himself. There's people out there who have seen these strengths in a negative place before, and they haven't ever thought of them as strengths. So and I recall his strengths being focus and strategic, and I want to say analytical, but this is years ago. But the story that you need to know about him is that gave him the confidence and the permission to go work towards becoming a very specific administrator within networking, and he achieved his goal through a couple of years of training and getting certifications under his belt, and that's what I'm calling the right fit. What I'm saying, where can you find, you may enter an organization at a certain point of entry, but then the world within that organization, you can find a role in which you can play to your strengths. If you could do it 80% of the time, why not go find that role and make yourself more useful for the organization and more energetic there, and it feeds your energy. So he became a network administrator, which is a highly sought after, highly skilled position. Increased his paycheck, I imagine, by a lot. And it made positive impacts on his life, and he attributes that to the Strengths program. And that's what I'd call is a good example of right fit.
Very cool. And Kathy, now that you're independent, this is a question from somebody in Mumbai. Now that you're independent, how do you go about getting leadership buy-in? Any thoughts?
Sure. So I'll tell you my independent story at this moment is word of mouth. Okay, so kind of word of mouth marketing, in that either things are coming to me through the relationships that I had built at Rackspace with not only Rackspace executives, but as well as just organizations out in the community. But that's how business is coming my way. So in the most case, it's either an employee who's wanting to introduce it at their organization, or a person within the leadership part of the organization. And so when I do leadership, or how I get leadership buy-in, is to go do a strengths class with the leadership and say, does this fit? If it doesn't fit, we shouldn't take this any further. We should make sure that this culture, it will accept this type of thinking, this strength-based mentality, and that you're going to walk the talk on it. And if you're not, then let's not do it, because it will just only frustrate your employees. And so that's kind of how I strategically enter into these relationships, is saying, if it fits, fantastic, let's do it. If it doesn't, let's not do it.
Okay, Jeremy, got any other questions?
Love it. No, I just... The practical piece of that, Kathy, is so critical, because again, from Gallup's standpoint, we can often sometimes just tell people, hey, here's what we think works, but and again, we have advice that we've heard from best practices and organizations and leaders like yourself, but I love you just saying, hey, having walked in those shoes, here's what this is like. And again, not all leaders are going to buy into it, but those that do, and I even had the chance yesterday to work with 2 different teams over the last couple of days, 2 different teams. One, the leader was not bought in. going into the session. He was by the end of the session.
Awesome.
But obviously, so I'm excited for what's next. The other leader was bought in coming into the team session, and where we got by the end was drastically different. So again, sometimes it just takes time. And he started out saying, well, I don't even know how you can determine this in a 45-minute online assessment, versus the other guy coming in and going, this is great. My wife looked at it and she said she thinks I need counseling. Maybe coaching can help me. But it was fun. He got really vulnerable really fast with his team, and I'm excited to see the results of what they're going to see out of it. So just your insight on that, and even hearing what you're doing now, I'm excited to have you as one of those 1 million coaches at this point. We're about 400, right? But you're one of those first 400 that are kind of connected in and saying, can't wait to change the world together. So thanks for everything you're doing. And Jim, thanks for producing this whole thing and making sure people like Kathy and I can operate the technology.
You bet. Sounds good.
Right.
Facebook.com/groups/call-to-coach. That's been a question over the last 5 minutes I've been fielding. So if you're still listening and you want to get out there, Facebook.com/groups/call-to-coach. That's where I put the invites for this, so you can get them back and just get notified in Facebook that an event is coming up. Kathy, great to meet you, and we'll look forward to maybe seeing you here in Omaha at some point when you get to come back. And with this, we'll end the recorded version of it. And hopefully, if you want all the resources for Call to Coach and everything that we're doing, just head out to the blog out at coaching.gallup.com. Thanks for listening. We'll be back here in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And we've got some great stuff for you. So thanks for listening. Goodbye, everybody.